the missionaries were in the vanguard of the colonial project.
Wow.
So, which means that they actually put up the missionaries to come and bring up what I call a philanthropic serving. Now, how do you volunteer to take somebody's goods and keep them safe? You know, I mean, if you have never had a better philosophical explanation of people,
Theft.
yes, that's what happens.
He's an author of one of the greatest books I've read, potentially in the last 10 years, which is the book called King Mzilikazi, kaMashobane. Friends, welcome to the LeadingSelf Podcast. My name is Gugulethu Maqetuga, your host, and it's good to be with you today to have this next episode of our wonderful podcast. As I've said before, this is a celebration of leadership. This is where we profile leaders who are making an impact in their areas and in their spaces. Today, we have one of those leaders, an author, a histographer, he calls himself, and someone who actually has a passion for the continent, and in my view, someone who has a passion in correcting misinformation about our history in terms of where we come from. For me, the most important thing is, when you know where you come from, you know who you are, and you will know where you're going. So we have today none other than Nthebe Molope. He is an author of one of the greatest books I've read, potentially in the last 10 years, which is the book called King Mzilikazi, kaMashobane. That's the book we're going to talk about today and delve deeper into the life of this great African, this great pioneer who actually ruled for many years in the Southern African space, from Zululand to what we call today Zimbabwe. Nthebe Molope, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you very much, sir. Molope it is.
Molope.
I know that among the Nguni people, my name actually does not discriminate. It hits people from Europe, Africa, West, East, yeah.
But Molope, that's wonderful.
Thank you very much. And thanks for the kind invite and your kind words.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So, you've written this book, an amazing book on the life of this great African king. Why take such a rigorous, such a deep, I've read about the research project, that it also consisted of a number of researchers who went to different spaces to look at the life of this great king. What inspired you to write this story?
Yeah, the if you see at the back of the book, I say that writing this book was getting into an abyss, because it allowed me to learn about certain things, and in the process also learn about myself and the African people. The one major issue that I continue to say about this story is that it was almost airbrushed out of history.
Okay.
It was almost deliberately left out because it did not suit the narrative of those people who were giving us history. You suddenly get a person with a particular personality, with particular characteristics which were not seen out of African people of the time. And so when you find that, it basically changes your trace in terms of what you are trying to achieve, because now it puts all of these things on their head. And so that is what was fascinating me to see. Wow. One must get into finding out more about this person.
And what would you say were the reasons behind trying to airbrush this story? I mean, is it because of the potency of Mzilikazi and what he did.
Yes, to a large extent. Look, when the different history makers and anthropologists looked at the history of Africa, remember, there are a lot of complexities around the making of history in Southern Africa and in Africa overall. The one part of history which is always almost put in a bit of a hidden corner is the role of the missionaries.
Yes.
Yes. And remember that, I say in my first book that which is called An Evolutionary Review on Black Education, I quote Bantu Biko, who says that the missionaries were in the vanguard of the colonial project.
Wow.
So, which means that they actually put up the missionaries to come and bring up what I call a theosophic serving. In other words, make you to become lull, make you to sleep. And then whilst that is happening, then they bring up their guns.
I see.
And then they take up the land. Because that is what has happened. I mean, when Steve Biko said that, I thought he is on point.
Yeah, spot on.
Because today, a lot of people have forgotten what the role of the Catholic Church has been in the missionary and in the slave project.
Yeah.
London has become rich because of the slave project.
France,
the whole of Europe. Today, I was just saying the other day that some of the biggest museums in Europe, whether you look at the Count Pushkin Museum in Russia, the La Louvre Museum in France, the Victoria and Albert Museum in the UK, all of them are replete with stolen goods out of Africa.
Artifacts.
All those artifacts are full in those museums. And now the excuse they give is that they're keeping them safely in their places. Now, how do you volunteer to take somebody's goods and keep them safe? I mean, if you have never had a better philosophical explanation of theft, yes, that's what happened.
That's what it is.
So that's what has made the stories.
Yeah.
And whether you want to look at what has happened in West Africa, because if you go a little bit further back with history, you will know that the route which would have been preferred for Europe to go to the east would have been the route of going via the top. In other words, going through near Egypt and what they call the Middle East.
The Gulf of Aden.
Yes,
those areas,
yes, which would have been much quicker. But the Arab communities then put a stop to that.
Okay.
And when that was being halted, then they had to go the long haul. And then when they started going through the west coast, that's when then they started to find African communities, and they, did what they did in Morocco, in Nigeria, in Senegal, in Ghana, coming all the way down to Angola. Incidentally, one of the generals of the people that actually, the viceroy that had was killed by the Khoi in South Africa, had first been a nuisance in Angola.
Okay.
Which ultimately became a Portuguese colony.
Wow.
And then, the ravaging that they did continued right up until they got into the entry point through the Cape.
I see.
And ultimately even.
I see. Wow. And we're gonna go into the depths of those, because I found the way you profiled some of those incidents and events was quite enlightening, because it brought a deeper understanding of of actually what was happening around the time,
Mm-hmm.
and what were the key motivations
Right.
of things like, you know, the colonialism,
Yeah.
the land dispossession, etc., that was happening. But tell us more about Nthebe Molope. Yes, who is this man? Why such a fascination with history?
Like I say, at first I never saw an interest, and I wondered why people wanted to study history. Until lately, that I found that actually in every study that you do, you'll find that there is a history of that particular study. There's a history of archaeology, there's a history of history, there's a history of economics, there's a history of English, you know.
Everything.
As I was studying English, I was quite fascinated to know that English is a Germanic language, you know. So it's those histories that then begin to give you a greater understanding of issues. But when some people get hold of the history, then they want to change it from what it is to what they want it to be. So my background is teaching, and I still consider myself to be continuing on this path.
Yeah.
I was recruited out of the classroom into sport, and I worked in sport for a substantial amount of my life, almost 30 years.
Wow.
And I used that time to learn a whole lot of things. I traveled the continent, and ultimately I had to study French. Okay. Because we were always having an experience that whenever there were meetings, we would get a briefing in French, which will be 2 minutes, and then the translation will be 30 seconds in English. And I thought
something is wrong.
Something is not right.
There's an edit of a message.
Absolutely, big time. And so I had to learn that. And obviously, during that time, I also learned the dynamics of the politics of Africa. You know, what is called Arab Africa and what is called Black Africa, and how these dynamics actually permeate within the sporting field. And you can see them even today. You know, when Banyana was playing Morocco recently, you can see what actually happens with that. And also the history of the Arab world, you know.
It's an interesting topic of its own.
We must not forget that they are settlers.
Yeah.
You know, and people forget that conveniently. And you can see it when you start to look at some of the artifacts which are there in those countries, that they come from African people. Yeah. The dances which have been done, traditional dances which they ban, almost the same as what happens in Argentina.
Wow.
In Argentina, one of the dances that were done by the African people, which they enslaved, was completely banned.
So it's actually a process of wiping out history.
Absolutely. Argentina today is completely white. And you wonder how does that happen? In the whole of South America is the only country in that continent that is white. And on the other hand, you look at Brazil, there are distinct cultural practices in Brazil which are similar to those that are in the Congo. Because if you look at the map, they are right on the same line.
Yeah.
Because the people were taken out of there
and plugged into South America.
Yes. Just as the ones that were taken from Mozambique and taken into Brazil on the plantations. Yeah. And I mean, today, Brazil has got the highest number of African descendants than compared to any other country in the world. And their politics are also just as intriguing as that. Because if you look at Pele, there are a lot of politics when you look at Pele. Yeah. Look at Pele and compare him to Ronaldinho in terms of their skin tone. Yeah. Because most of the Brazilians prefer to be like Ronaldinho as opposed to being like Pele. Because it's a reminder to who they are, where they come from.
But then you can't deny the talent.
No.
You can't wipe him out. You can't wipe Pele out.
That you can't, absolutely.
Yeah. Let's bring it back home. You describe and there's a narrative around the arrival of colonialists, people like Jan van Riebeeck, into the Cape. And I'm trying to also set the context in terms of which King Mzilikazi rises.
Mm-hmm.
That period where the history that we learn at school says there was no one in the Cape.
Uh-huh.
The colonialists arrived, and then Africans were coming down from the north.
Mm.
Then there was this empty land theory. I think we had it much recently when the Trump white genocide story was rearing its ugly head. Tell us, so you did some digging into that space. Tell us, was there an empty land when colonialists arrived?
You see, people make up all sorts of theories, and theories that must suit their narrative. If you go to Mpumalanga, next to Barberton, there's a place called Mveloyelanga.
Yes.
The
stone buildings.
Yes. And it's also something I wrote about in the first book. There are a number of things there which predate a whole lot of things. They talk about 80,000 years back.
Wow.
Michael Tellinger has written quite a bit about that in his book, about the Anunnakis. Now, you have got that, and then you have got the Great Zimbabwe, which the ages or the years around the Great Zimbabwe, I know a lot of people argue about them in terms of the accuracy of the age. You got Mapungubwe, which is also another interesting thing, a topic for another day. Mapungubwe, about the stones and about the Jacobs.
Yes.
And which is against the first century, right? Now, around the first century, maybe 600 current era, and about 1,000 years. And then you have got some of the latest findings by the researchers right here close to, which is part of what was called Kweneng, place of Bakwena, which takes you to about the year 400.
Wow.
So it tells you where Bakwena, and how far back they come. So the year 400. Now, when you go to 1652, it's more than 1,200 years later. And one thing that you find with, I always talk of this book by Hazel Crawford, because she makes some very interesting points. One of the points she makes is about the existing roads that are there today. Your N1, your N3, your N12. And she argues that those roads were actually based on the routes that were traveled by African people for the longest of time, because they were able to work out how they can be able to cross over rivers, how they could be able to go over mountains and so on, and that all of those established routes. I mean, today you've got that Van Riennen Pass. Van Riennen arrived so many years after the Ndeveles and the Hlubis had passed through from Nambiti. And they found a way of going over the Drakensberg without necessarily climbing over it. And that pass was there. And if you drive towards Zululand, Natal, you will find that most of the passes, even in Lesotho, they call them passes because they were actually part of the treks that were traveled by the Khoi and the San. That's why some of them are actually called Bushman passes.
Okay.
Because they were following their routes in that way. So the road that is now made today, conveniently, is following what was made by these people those many years ago.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing is that when the four trekkers, which is much later, after the Jan van Riebeeck and all the people who had come through, when the voortrekkers wanted to go up country, they relied on African people to help them.
Yes, those were the scouts,
because they knew the land, because they had always been traveling. So this notion that there
was no one
is an absolute farce.
Yeah. And I think for me, that's where, in essence, the lie begins.
Mm-hmm.
So that dispossession can be justified.
Absolutely.
It can be explained.
Correct.
Tell us about the Khoi and the San, because, sometimes, in history, you hear just dots about those communities and they found the Khoi, and that's it. Tell us about the Khoi and also the fact that they're not actually then positioned largely in history as Africans.
Yeah.
They are always incidental.
Yeah. That is part of the erasure of history. Because remember, even in some academic work, people are very sensitive around calling them with those names, because they say those names were actually made up out of the academic world and the anthropologists as well. Because there are many distinct groups of those people. If I'm to borrow just a bit out of Sheikh Anta Diop, he talks about the Dinkas, which were people that were found in the area close to Ethiopia and Somali and so on. And he says that when the Europeans conveniently want to make a distinction of different African groups, but they want to be looked at as one. But when you look at them, you'll find that even they don't look exactly the same. There are those with a darker tint.
Yeah.
There are those with a lighter hue. There are those with curly hair. There are those with he says they are very distinct. But he says if you can at any stage want to classify a Dutch from an Italian, they stand up and they fight for it.
Yeah.
But he says conveniently, when you look at the African people in terms of the let us call it the pigment kaleidoscope, we go from extreme to extreme, from pitch black to extremely light complexion.
Yeah.
And those are people of the same from the same descendancy. But then it is very convenient when you want to push a particular narrative that you will then say like that. Because if you look at the what they call the Khoi and the San, those people were spread out throughout the continent.
Wow.
That is why even their artworks were spread out throughout the continent. The paintings on the stones, you don't only find in Lesotho, you don't only find in Uganda, you don't only find in Libya, you don't only find in Vryburg, you find them all over. So, and that shows you their movements. I mean, some of the early arrivals in Africa were saying that when they came in, they saw three groupings of people, especially in Central Africa. And one distinct group was what we call the Twa people, which were the shorter people. They are still there today in amongst the Tutsis and the Hutus and so on. The Twa people are still there. And correctly, as you say, some of them, we refer to them as Abatwa. And incidentally, those were some of the people who helped Mzilikazi when he was lost in Botswana. It was Umutwa who helped Mzilikazi to find his trek back into Zimbabwe. And in honoring Umutwa, then said Singabatwa. So because we are plenty Singabatwagas. That's why up till today, Nthebe Mzilikazi are referred to as Abatwagas.
Wow. Wow. So in essence, the Khoi and the San are indigenous people
Absolutely.
across the continent, not only in the Western Cape.
No.
Not only, because history sometimes can be manufactured to represent a certain narrative
Yeah.
that advances, certain prerogatives
Yes.
that colonialists have.
Well, maybe to close off on that
Yeah.
point, the other thing is that the intermarriage between the African people and what is called the Khoi and even the Koranas,
Okay.
because the Koranas were actually a part of the Griqua makeup, of which a person like Sol Plaatje is one of them.
Wow.
And Sol Plaatje was a Morolo.
Wow.
So you find that if you go to a place which is called Motibi-Stad, the king, the paramount king of Batlaping,
Okay.
of Motibi-Stad, which are called the people, those who stayed behind to eat fish, Batlaping. Yes, because they're actually an offshoot of Barolo. Just like Bakubu, which are an offshoot of Barolong as well. Now, the paramount king of Batlaping was Moleha Bangwe. Moleha Bangwe had a Khoi wife amongst his wives.
Okay.
Just in the same way as many of the African kings. So if this marriage, which is the argument that I put at some stage, if the marriage between the Khoi people and the kings was happening to such extent, it means that in the communities, it would have been even much more prevalent.
Wow.
Moshweshwe had a Khoi woman.
Okay.
As well.
Wow.
And Moshweshwe, who was being guided by Moshomi, Muramunyan, told him that to be a formidable leader, you have to have various principles. You cannot just be harsh on your people.
Okay.
Marry amongst them.
Wow.
Because when they see you, they see one of you, of them.
Of themselves.
Yes, so they will not attack you. And that is why this philosophy was quite prevalent amongst African people.
Okay. Interesting. Wow. Yeah, light bulbs are sort of coming up. You also then go into a very important part of history, which is Mfecane, Difaqane. That period where there was great movements of people within Southern Africa. And the history we studied, and I must also qualify because it's not necessarily, I just don't want to say history. It's the history we studied says that Mfecane was started by bloodthirsty savages who wanted to kill people and run around, But you present a very interesting dynamic to actually what was happening around that period, specifically around the issue of the slave trade and slave traders. Tell us about that period. What was happening?
Let me put it a bit into perspective. Mzilikazi was born around 1795.
Yeah.
The war, the 100-year war of dispossession, started in 1785. So Mzilikazi would have been 10 years when the war was already, would have been just been 10 years when the war was already raging for that time. It went on up until 1895.
Okay.
So you'll understand, Mzilikazi died in 1868.
Yeah.
So he was birthed into a time of war, lived his entire life
during the war,
and even died.
Wow.
And post his death, the war was still raging.
Yeah.
Now, John Laband calls it very correctly that it is a war of dispossession, because that's exactly what was happening.
Yeah.
The people were coming, and they were moving the frontier. They were saying that the frontier of British Kaffraria, as they call it, was coming up to the K River.
Okay.
So, which means that the African people were supposed to start from there upwards, but they were moving them all this time,
pushing them out.
They were pushing them out.
So the whole narrative that we are immigrants into the Western Cape, so it doesn't start now. There was a deliberate push.
Yeah, well, they push people. I mean, you know, there's a river called Kamisa, which was called by the Khoi, which is flowing into the Atlantic Ocean, which is where the Khoi people who lived in the Cape used to drink their water. You go there, you try and look for Kamisa today, you won't find it. One, because there's been quite a lot of development and there's a lot of names that have been changed. I mean, if you go to the Cape today, you tell me how many places have got Khoi names. It's completely changed, except for Naisna, which is an indigenous name, and it you can see that name is not Dutch, it's not English, it's a completely different name. And then all these names then started changing, like Harib, which is a Khoi name. And where is Harib? It's what is called the Orange River. So it shows you the track of how all these people had been. I was talking about the Val, which is Likwa, which is what the Khoi called it. So it shows you that those traces are there of where the Khoi people had always been. Now, so I was just saying the war that was happening of pushing people had been happening for quite a long time.
Okay.
And information was moving. There were no cell phones in those times. But African people were able to communicate and they were able to warn each other that this is what is happening. And this is my argument. My writing of this book is basically an argument about a narrative that has been presented. Because I argue that the East Coast prepared itself much better than what happened in the Cape. Because the people in the Cape did not expect these Europeans to turn against them to that extent that they did. Because remember that the first attack which happened on the Khoi by Viceroy de Almere, and then the people decided to attack him when he was now coming in and trying to take their cattle by force and so on. It was out of there that the Portuguese then decided that this is dangerous land. They must stay out of it. In the same way that the Europeans who had gone to try and attack Madagascar around the same time, they found them to be vicious people that fought and defended their land, and they decided this is not a place to play at. One of the people who was actually killed there was a doctor who had married Krotoa. Krotoa, the lady who became a servant slave of in the castle of Jan van Riebeeck.
Okay.
So Krotoa was basically almost taken out of her community because she had to live a double life, if you like. At one stage, she was dressing up in skin, animal skin, like his own people. Then when she went to work, she had to dress in a frost coat.
Okay.
And she had to dress like the Dutch. And unfortunately, they abused her. And then there's a lot of books. They have got a whole lot of story about how she was abused, and even abused by Jan van Riebeeck himself. That some of the descendants that came out of Krotoa were actually Jan van Riebeeck's children.
Oh.
But that story, where do you find that story? Nowhere. In fact, you'll be lucky to find the name Krotoa because they called her with a name that they baptized to give it.
Okay.
So, which was the violence of Christianity by and large. There's a story of Manzoba, who they also fought and wanted to baptize and then to call her Anna. There's a story of Nzinga,
Queen Zinga.
Queen Zinga, that they also
Angola.
got to, yes, also, yes, they also got to have it baptized and to call her Ana de Souza. So the violence in terms of the naming of people is something that was sustained for the longest of time. And I have, for my sake, been wondering, what is the relationship between accepting Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior and understanding that an isosceles triangle has got three sides which are equal?
Okay.
What is the relationship? Because that is what the missionaries were basically doing. You had to accept Jesus Christ to be your Lord and Savior before they could come and teach you maths and teach you English and teach you that. And then they were withholding the resources, because it is those communities that accepted Christianity where they first built clinics, and they built this and that. So those people who were rejecting this notion of a white God were punished so that they don't have development. But when people who got that teaching, that knowledge, and used it against the colonialists, they didn't like them.
I see.
Which is the people like your Steve Biko, your Mandelas, and so on, because they then, like you have in the book of Tempest, Shakespeare, who says, I recognize the letters, but I can't read the words.
I see.
Which shows the level of basically illiteracy that the people were at. So when these people became literate, they took this education and they
turned it around.
Yes.
I see.
Yes.
But also, you talk about the shifts that were happening around King Shaka, whose real name is Mlilwane. And how those when slave traders were grabbing people started spreading and running into different communities, and that's when you started having those wars and a bit of destabilization happening. That it was driven primarily by the slave trade, and that's when Mzilikazi was also coming into being as an influential leader.
You see, Elizabeth Eldridge explains it much better, because she says that these defensive states that were developing amongst African people were developing as a way of ensuring that people can actually take care of themselves. I have said earlier that the people in the Cape, primarily the Xhosa people, had not anticipated this. But when it started, they defended themselves. I mean, they could have been easily quashed if they were not fighting back.
Yes.
But they fought back.
The colonial wars.
Yes. 100 years that they were fighting.
100
years. So that information went through. And so the part of Zululand became a defensive state by itself. So the people had to find a way that they can be able to defend their territory. And some of the things which are being said by Shepstone, Theodore Theophilus Shepstone, that Dingizwayo actually came and worked for him. But Shepstone is not a very credible character also, because there's a number of things that he did which, today Zululand was crushed by him.
And that's the guy whose a territory or his town is Port Shepstone is named after him.
That's the irony. That's the irony, that most of the people who messed up Africa, the places are still named after them. Harry Smith.
30 years after the
Yes, Harry Smith killed Hinsa in a very cruel way. And we still have his name hanging out there. So now, when these people made a defensive state, and my argument is that it then exploded, because now there was quite a lot of weaponry that was being developed out of there. Because one of the places which was almost seen like a factory of those weaponry for defending themselves was in Nkandla Forest.
Yes.
Which is where the spears were being made and so on.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, obviously, when there's quite a lot of armory that is kept in and around the place, it's touch and go.
Yeah.
And that is what happened. That because the battles that were happening at those times were not as fierce as what happened afterwards.
Okay.
But Stapleton also says that they had people that they called the Mantati. But what they call the Mantati, to some extent, some of them were the Griquas. Because remember, they took the Griquas and they used them to go and fight against the African people.
And the Griquas in this context are children of Dutch and Khoi women.
And Xhosa.
And Xhosa.
Yes,
Okay.
there's that combination. And then later also with Tswana.
I see.
So the Griqua makeup is quite a complex one.
Yeah.
But if you look at the movement of a Voortrekker and you look at the map of South Africa, as they penetrated up country, they never went towards the east. They went more towards the west.
Okay.
You know, because they, to a smaller extent, they went to the west just a little, because there was the area where the Griqua lived in the majority. They wouldn't have wanted to go there because they were fierce fighters.
Yeah.
And they knew that. And they knew they were not going to come right. Actually, they went and fetched the Griqua when they wanted to use them against other people.
I see.
Which is exactly what they did when they wanted to chase Mzilikazi out. They got the Griquas.
Exactly.
There were more Griquas than the Afrikaners, the Boers, who chased Mzilikazi. So in terms of the recorder, it is the Andries Potgieter, who chased out Hendrik Potgieter, who chased out Mzilikazi.
Yes.
But he did it through other people.
I see. Let's get into Mzilikazi, because I think for me we've set the scene,
right,
in terms of where does this king, what was the period, the nature of the space in which he emerges. Who was Mzilikazi?
Firstly, I want to look at him in terms of his age. This is a man who starts leading a nation at about the age of 30.
30, okay.
And you may argue that it is a very young age. But then you have to look at it in full context.
Okay.
That if you look at the upheavals in many places, many countries, and even at university, the most outspoken people are those in their 20s.
Yeah.
In their mid-20s and so on, because that's where they start to question the world. That's where they want to stand up against authority and so on. So if you look at it in relation to Mzilikazi, you would say that he was much more ripe at that time, because he was already past that age of 20. Then you look at 30 again, and you look at many of the leaders in Africa that have come out. Lembete was around that age. Mandela was around that age when he started to stand up. Thomas Sankara. Today we have Traore.
Yeah.
You have so many people are around the age of 30, which is it's a ripe
age for leadership.
For leadership, and you can argue that Malema also started around the same age. So it's that is the age that the rightful age, including Shaka himself, was around that age. Umlilwa is around that age. So the argument that other people pose that no, but he was a little bit too, it cannot be correct. That was the age that Steve Biko was surprising people in and around almost everywhere. Frans Fanon.
Sobukwe,
that is the age. Now, this man who makes very difficult choices. In that, on the one side, he knows that Amantungwa, the Kumalos, were living close to the Zwide Confederacy. And now, as a way of making things to be a little bit easy between Amantungwa and the Ndwandoes, was to say, well, let's see how we are being accepted by the king. And the king was, quite amenable to getting them to be part of their whole confederacy, to an extent that he allowed that kaMashobane to marry one of his daughters
Okay.
as a way of extending the friendship. Remember that philosophy I spoke about?
Yeah.
Banyalle.
Babanyalle.
Banyalle, yes. So marry amongst them.
Yeah.
So kaMashobane marries in that family. Mzilikazi is raised in the homestead of Zwide.
Yes.
Being mentored basically for the future. During that time, there's heavy tensions between the Ndwandwes and the Mthethwas, under whom Umlilwana is.
Yes.
But those tensions are almost like manageable because they can still live with it, but there's uneasy. And Elizabeth Eldridge again explains that the major issue is that where the Ndwandwes were located, which was much closer to the east coasts, the northern east coast, what today is referred to as Maputo, named after a man called Mabudo.
Mabudo.
Yes, and so those people, and which is very interesting also, that the earlier movers of the Arabs that came there in that area, they had a sultan who was called Musa Mbiek, after whom Mozambique was later called.
Musa Mbiek.
Yes. So now, so they had access to the east coast, and therefore they could trade with the Portuguese. And so they became a barrier and were basically stopping the Mthethwas from having the same access. And now, remember that the Portuguese in their own way had been ravaging the place. There's a man called Albacini, who was one of their major generals, who is said to have been going more inland and reaching up to Venda, and taking people and making them and traders and taking them slaves towards Mozambique, and later they were taken to Brazil. So as that was happening, many people then sought shelter, and they ran to Mlilwana's territory.
And for those who are joining us now, Mlilwane is King Shaka.
Absolutely, yes. And now the whole notion is that because of those tensions, it one way or the other was going to be something that was going to give. Because it's very interesting that their nicknames, the nickname of Mthethwa and the nickname of Zwide, were both giving a hint in terms of their forcefulness and their strength and their leadership. And so both of them decided that, they were not going to yield. And so at one stage, which is what oral history tells us, Mthethwa did capture Zwide. But apparently Mthethwa then gave Zwide a warning and let him go. And apparently at some stage Mlilwana was then unhappy with Mthethwa's actions. He said, you should have killed that way, because it would have sorted out all of these things. He is the one who's now going to kill you because you have let him go. Now, the many history books allude to the fact that when Zwide then called Mthethwa into a meeting, he tricked him to say that now he wants to have this thing finalized now as a peace
deal, yeah.
Yes. And when he came in, he killed him. And then, which is what then happened, that later he then happened to kill kaMashobane. And when he kills kaMashobane, that's where Mzilikazi then had to make a decision to say, do I stay with my grandfather under these conditions, or do I rather go and join my adversaries across the river? And so he then decided on the latter. So at that time, he had been seeing a lot of things. He had learned about the military strategy of Zwide. He had learned about how he tenders on people, on the cattle, and he learned a whole lot of things. And that was the arsenal of knowledge that he took over to Shaka. The interesting narrative from the ground is that apparently when he crossed over to go and join Umlilwana, he was given the blessing by Zwide's mother.
I see.
Who was a very knowledgeable on witchcraft, and who was gifted in that area. We're told so she was very powerful.
Yeah.
And so she decided, when her son killed kaMashobane, that she is going to give the blessings and the support and the herbs and magical charms to Mzilikazi.
I see.
Which is, on the one hand, oral history says that is why Mzilikazi was able to withstand so many wars.
Yes.
Over the years.
Wow.
Because he had a charm that had been given
by the
old lady who was so knowledgeable in that regard.
So Mzilikazi partners with Umlilwane.
Yes.
They fight wars, and then they fall out.
Yes. I in one stage argue that Mzilikazi was a very resolute person.
Yes.
He'd make decisions and stand by them. For me, he was very clear from the outset that I'm not going to stand under this man. I'm not going to be ruled by Umlilwana. I'm going to make my decision as to what I want.
Yeah.
And the reason I argue that way is that when Umlilwana sent men to go and fetch the cattle that Mzilikazi had taken, one of the things that he said, Angnangos, mina Mzilikazi kaMashobane. Angnangos, And then he says, if Shaka wants to meet on the terms of peace, I am ready to meet him. But if he is going to be fighting, then I'm also ready for battle. Wow. So he was quite resolute in terms of what he had decided, because it seems he had already decided that he wants to start his own way.
Yes.
But there are other aspects which are said in terms of oral history, where it is said that there was some sort of an agreement between the two that they will part amicably. And you could argue that to be true because Umlilwana never followed him.
Yes.
He never, there were other people who were interested and were actually disappointed. Because when he refused to hand over the cattle, remember he was taken into the fold of Umlilwana. And then he became a general. You still have Mhlangana, you still have Udingane, you still have a whole lot of other prominent people. And Mhlangana and Udingane are direct brothers
of Umlilwane.
Yes, and they're being overlooked. And you can imagine that they were clearly unhappy about this.
Wow.
That here is a guy coming out of the Kumalos, and now he's been given so much recognition. And so when he did this, I can imagine that there were some of the first people who said, no, let's go for him.
Yeah.
And when Umlilwana was not interested, they were quite disappointed.
In fact, I suppose your story is backed up by the fact that after King Shaka dies, Dingane goes after Mzilikazi.
Correct.
Exactly.
Correct.
But we'll get to that. So, the adventure then begins.
Yeah.
The adventure begins when there's a fallout and King Mzilikazi starts moving.
Yes.
Travels through Mozambique, what we call Mozambique,
yes.
Mpumalanga, to the Val.
Yes.
He fights the Khoi, the Griquas. What is he doing around that time? Is he raiding? Is he amassing? Is he building a nation? What is happening?
Rasmussen puts it in a very interesting way. He says he was looking for men and women.
Okay.
Because from that very moment, he had seen that they had a formidable force.
Mm.
And remember, if you go slightly back, that in the history, one of the people who had a female warrior group was Mkabayi Kajama.
Ah, yes.
You know,
Mkabayi.
Abakulus, who were warrior women. So Mzilikazi knew that some of the women could also withstand in battle, but they were actually given different tasks.
Mm.
And some of them was to rear children, to look after the fields, for plowing and so on. And he made, which is why I was saying that he was very unique in many ways.
Mm.
Yes, the 1830s and so on were very violent.
Mm.
There was a lot of war that was happening, and some of it which was brought in by the issue of Mfecane. And you had to be able to withstand your ground.
Yeah.
And so what he was doing in most instances, he was getting into the different communities and he was trying to negotiate for them to join him.
I see.
And where they refused to do that, he would fight them.
Okay.
And then he will coerce them into that. But the interesting narrative is that whereas other people say that he was so violent, he was just killing for killing's sake and so on, is that his name is there in all those various communities where people identify with him.
Wow. And that's very fascinating.
That is a fascinating part of the story. Because you go amongst Botswana, who I presume were the most ruthlessly dealt with, Mogale, who after whom, one of the greatest leaders amongst Botswana. You have Mogale River, you have Mogale Mountain, which is called Magaliesberg.
Magaliesberg, yes.
You got Magaliesberg, the Berg and Berg, which is the town and the mountain.
Yeah.
Named, so three distinct places that are named after him. But the Mogale from that area indicate, and this is out of their own history. They say that when Mzilikazi captured them, he actually got their king to put in Ikrik.
Okay.
As saying that you are now part of us.
Wow.
But what is interesting is that most of the communities he went through, he never made them to change who they are, which was part of the intelligence that he used. Because when people were coming and looking for him, they would find people draped in their own different dress, and they will find them speaking their own language. And so for intelligence, you would come in and you'll find Tswana speaking people, and you would not recognize that these are actually part of what Mthwakazi was busy building.
So they were part of the Mzilikazi's troops.
Absolutely.
In a way.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But they were gatherers of intelligence.
Wow.
Because remember, the main people that he got to be the fighters were those of Nguni origin.
In fact, you write something very interesting. You said when he left Zululand, he left with plus minus 500 warriors. But when he started, when the empire sort of started settling in Zimbabwe, he had over 70,000.
Yes.
Wow.
Well, because remember we said he was taking men and women.
Yeah.
So then some of the women then became the people that were being married amongst his troops.
Yeah.
And because if you look at the areas that Mzilikazi was targeting, juxtapose it with how the missionaries worked, you'll find a very interesting correlation. When the missionaries were coming into the land, they looked for places where the majority of people were. Because remember, they wanted to spread the gospel.
Yeah.
So it was going to be of no use to try and just convince 10 people. You wanted to convince thousands.
Thousands of people. Yeah.
So Mzilikazi was using the same philosophy.
Wow.
That when I go and conquer, I must not go and conquer 10 people.
Conquer a nation.
I must conquer a nation. I must conquer groups and numbers of people,
Wow.
so that this nation of mine can then grow.
Yeah.
Which is why you find the places that he went to are also the same places which the missionaries had also. So there were intersections in terms of where he moved.
Yeah.
If you look at a place like Kaditshwe, which is next to Ziras, that place is said to, in 1820, to have been having a population which was almost equal to that of the Cape.
1820.
And there is a United Nations heritage site there, because part of the things that were done there was that the people were mining iron in that area. So you can imagine mining iron, so it's a trade, so people come in numbers in that area. And so Manti went past there, and then Mzilikazi also.
In fact, I want us to talk about Manti because when Mzilikazi reaches the Val, then their paths don't collide, but they go past each other. But there's this queen called Manti. Who is this lady? Because she's a warrior queen.
Yes. If you go through Mazizi Kunene's book, Emperor Shaka, he says at one stage, when Umlilwana's warriors went to report to Umlilwana that Moshweshwe has been ravaged by Manti, they say Umlilwana laughed. They said it's not possible that a woman can do that to Moshweshwe. Moshweshwe is a formidable leader.
Yeah.
And then when they gave the detail, he was so shocked, because she remember that Moshweshwe had been still growing, under the Bamukotei.
Yeah.
And when they were first attacked there, it was Manti who shook them. And then they took refuge there in the mountain. And when Mzilikazi came, it had been some time after Manti. So you're correct that they never really met. And a lot of the story that we get is that he never really went over Harib. It was his troops that went through. But he, remember, had been chasing and even chased the Griqua right up to over the Harib, Mzilikazi, when they first came to come and attack him, together with Dawiyam Lezal, who was one of the other major leaders, and who went into a collaboration with the Griquas. So that the Griquas are very prominent in terms of where you find the footprints of the different battles that were happening. They always feature. But what is interesting is that Mzilikazi managed to fight and battle against the Griquas, and even managed to, in his own skillful way, defeat them without having guns at that time.
Wow.
And which is what made some of the other Griquas, because they kept on splitting into splinters, very worried that it means some of the people who were leading them were actually leading them astray.
I see. What were the leadership qualities that you would say at that time King Mzilikazi was sort of growing into? Because this was also still the early days. Yeah. What leadership qualities, in your view, show up?
I spoke about resoluteness, where you will make a decision and stand by it and decide that if this decision does not work, he will find a way in which he can turn it around. That's one of the things. Secondly, he was very decisive on the issue of trying to be innovative. I spoke about the issue of the where the groups of people that he was getting to, because he wanted numbers.
Yeah.
And that's where he got he used intelligence to quite a great distance. It is the same intelligence that he used and helped push Lilwana to go over the battles.
Yeah.
Because he knew about Ndwandwe and how Ndwandwe was organized.
Yeah.
And he fed that intelligence to the Mtetwas, to Shaka.
And I suppose this is where his skill was. Because around that period, he meets the four trekkers.
Yeah.
But he also moves to the northwest and settles. I mean, he creates a kingdom in the northwest. Yeah. But to your point, his resoluteness, his intelligence, his agility as well. Yeah. To tell us about that period now when he goes to Tswana lands and he becomes a prominent. I mean, some of the places in your research were named after Mzilikazi.
Correct.
And they are still like that today.
To this day,
in the northwest,
yes.
in Botswana.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. In Namibia, in Zambia. Yes. I talk about the intelligence that he used, because he used to do a lot of reconnaissance. And this you can see in the type of places that he chose. Yeah. I kid you not. You go to here in a place called in Johannesburg. I think it's called the Wilds.
Okay.
It's not very far from Johannesburg Hospital, where he used to live.
Mzilikazi.
kaMashobane.
Is this man a ghost? Is he the Holy Spirit? He's everywhere?
But you see, the other thing is that it is clear that some places he sent his troops. But what is very clear is that out of the intelligence he got, the similarity of the places that I will talk about is just too striking to have been a coincidence. Because it is the wilds where he was. It was next to the Apis Rivier, next to Wonderboom, where he lived. It is Magaliesberg.
And Wonderboom is where the Union Building
is. Yes.
In fact, it's funny because where the Union Building is situated today, it's on top of one of the palaces.
Correct.
Of King Mzilikazi.
Absolutely. Though we must not also take away the fact that when he took over that palace, he was actually taking it from Mnyama of the Ndebeles, which brings you to how the Amantungwa got to be called
Amandebele,
because they conquered Amandebele.
I see.
And so when they were appearing, people were seeing Amandebele because they had quite a number of Ndebele warriors amongst them.
I see.
So I argue that this name of Amandebele is a moniker, it's a nickname. It's not really their name, but it stuck with them because nowhere in their praise names do they refer to themselves as Amandebele.
Okay.
It is other people who refer to them that.
Okay.
So you look at all these places, the elevation, the access to water nearby, the camouflage of nature. You see it in that place in Wonderboom in the Apis. You see it in the wilds. You see it in Magaliesberg. You see it in Botswana. You see it in Zimbabwe. So the terrain is exactly identical and very similar. So you can see that this is no coincidence.
Yeah.
So when he was sending you out, he tells you, this is what I want.
So this is a battle plan.
Mm-hmm.
This is a strategy of conquest.
Mm.
Get into elevated spaces and set up your base.
Correct.
Because then you can see your enemies coming.
Yes.
You can and also, I mean, you describe also one of the most fascinating strategies of war, where he actually puts some of his amabuto
Mm.
in different spaces
Correct.
around himself.
Yes, yes.
So that by the time war starts,
Mm.
he's able to make decisions.
Yes.
Whether he stays, he fights,
Mm.
he shifts, he moves.
Absolutely.
Wow. I mean, like, this man is a strategist.
No, he's a military strategist. And then
He's a Sun Tzu of some kind.
yeah, because they also had Mkichi.
Ah.
You know, amongst the Zulu and Nguni people, they will tell you about Mkichi. You know, this is a fast runner who, as soon as something is happening, must run to the palace to say, hey, those people are coming. So they get themselves ready. So where you are positioned in terms of the strength of the regiment. The strongest regiment will be towards the heart. Those ones who will either delay you or repel you are right at the beginning. So that's how he positions them.
Wow.
And then he decides that, okay, this is how this is going to happen. And also the other thing is that as he was establishing his settlement,
yeah,
the argument from other authors is that he was actually setting up villages. If you look at the pictures which are drawn about how Dinga's settlement was, you see an entire village and almost a town.
Yeah.
And with a setup which is also still militaristic, because you can't just access. Now, the similarity for me between Mzilikazi and Dingane is that one of the common elements, because I see their personalities to be quite similar. And for me, the weakness of Dingane was not to go and join hands with Mzilikazi, but rather to try and fight him.
Yeah.
Because one of the commonality between them is that they rejected the notion of a white god, which then became a problem for a number of people. Remember that the LMS, the London Missionary Society, had been on this mission of making sure that they can be able to lull people.
Yeah.
And then bring in what they did.
Yeah.
When Mzilikazi set up or allowed, because he allowed them to set up a missionary, but it was not supposed to be too close to the royal house.
Yeah. Okay.
Which was same thing that Dingane did.
Okay.
He said, if you want to set this thing up, it must be about 3 to 5 days walk from my palace.
Okay.
So, because if you're going to set up next to me here, the next moment I get to wake up, I find that things have fallen apart. So it must be that far.
Yeah.
Enyati in Zimbabwe, which was the missionary that was set up by Robert Moffat.
Who becomes a very important player in Mzilikazi's story.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a different view about Robert Moffat.
Okay.
Almost similar to what this Mfecane thing, about how it is set up and presented to us. There are many perspectives about what Mfecane was. Some people saying it was just a bloodletting of blacks fighting blacks. And even the voortrekkers argue that they came in and they helped to keep the blacks apart.
They were peacemakers.
And a guy called Halala says that it was actually the guns of the voortrekkers which was causing the mayhem. They never caught to assist in that regard. So this whole notion, as it's been presented, is a twisted notion. Because even the word Mfecane, if you try and look at the epistemology of the word Mfecane, it does not really originate out of the Nguni language. And some of the earlier writers among the European settlers were the ones who came about with that word.
Okay.
You find in the Nguni language there's a ukfaka, but Mfecane, and what is even interesting is that it has got a Sesotho equivalent.
Okay, Difaqane.
Yes. So, I mean, this is one historian says that it is a smoked up word.
Okay.
Which they brought in to be able to explain this. And what is interesting is that the same man I spoke about earlier, Yeah, I must dust my brain now.
Yeah.
Mromunyan,
Yes.
he predicted that this was going to happen
Okay.
many years
Okay.
before it happened.
Okay.
He said there will be this war that he can see that is going to come.
Yeah.
And I mean, he spoke about this. I speak about it in the book around how he predicts it.
Okay.
And that how it actually starts and it drifts many African people apart.
Tell me about Moffat. What is his role here? Because if you track and you write about to a point where even when Mzilikazi gets into Zimbabwe, there's a Moffat element and the friendship that is there. And I sometimes ask myself if Moffat wasn't an agent of psychological warfare against Mzilikazi and kingdoms.
Yeah, first of all, I spoke about that Inyati mission that Moffat set up after he was being permitted by Mzilikazi. But Mzilikazi said, no, you can set it up, but I'm not going to be attending that. I'll watch it from a distance.
Yeah.
And that mission apparently for a long time was almost unsuccessful in terms of recruiting people. Just like Moffat's son-in-law, the one who settled in Zambia, after whom the place in Zambia is still named after until today, Livingstone. You know, Livingstone was said to be a very unsuccessful missionary. He was not able to convert people at the speed that they expected him to. So he just converted a few, and then of course he got himself busy with other things. Now, when Moffat came in, because it was Mzilikazi who sent his emissaries to go and meet Moffat in Kuruma.
Okay. And that's what Mzilikazi, when he's in the northwest now.
He's in the northwest, yes. He's more actually at Mahalis and the Apis, because remember, he was not seeing these places as distinct
as we see it today.
Yes. Yeah. He sees them as part of the terrain that he's ruling over. So you look at where the Apis is, those mountains, you look at where what he called in Dinaneni, which is Zilka's neck. You look at the place in the Zerast area. All of those different places, he basically is ruling over them.
Okay.
Now he is there at the in the Apis area, and he sends his emissaries to go and to Kuruma. His main aim is that he has seen these men with sticks that belch fire.
Okay.
You know, these are all these guns.
Guns, yes.
And he says, these sticks are only in the hands of white people.
Okay.
So the only way of getting these sticks in our hands is to make some friendship with one of them.
I see.
So that is the reason he goes to
Moffat. I see.
So these two have got different agendas.
Yeah.
Moffat's agenda is that Mzilikazi has got such a big influence around African people.
Yeah.
If I pass into Mzilikazi, I'll have access to all these people.
Yes.
So they've got conflicting agendas. Because Mzilikazi wants these guns, and he also wants somebody who has got knowledge about them so that he can repair them if they've got problems. Moffat is feels that no, the word of God does not allow for this thing of killing killed and so on. You know, I'm not going to be a pathway. But he does not stop at Moffat. He then later finds the guns from a guy called Shun.
Okay.
Who shows him the gun and who displays how it works, shoots a cow, kills it, and then he asks him to shoot at a stone. And then when this guy takes aim at that stone, shoots at it, Mzilikazi goes, it touches that stone. He says, I could have done this by just blowing my air. This couldn't be so powerful. You told us these things are so powerful. So the interesting thing around that is that apparently they say Mzilikazi had quite a sense of humor, which is one of the elements of intelligence.
Wow.
People who are quite intelligent,
quite charismatic.
Yes,
quite charismatic.
yes,
because
yes.
you can't build a nation like that
Yes.
without the leader becoming, a man of the people.
Correct. And they say his sense of humor was such that he was the only man who was known to have made Shaka laugh.
Okay.
Very interesting.
Wow.
So, and he had these jabs that he always threw. Like now he says that this bullet, the marketed maid could have made it by just blowing air into that stone. And he took a jab at one stage at Robert Moffat.
Yeah.
Where he says, you have put up so much weight since you've been with me. And I told you when you first came here that you must stop just drinking milk. You must also drink a bit of African beer. So they say Moffat acknowledged that, he's right. I've actually started to become putting up a bit of weight, but it's not out of just the things that he's recommending. So he was quite an
interesting fellow.
And they say, sorry, just to add, they say also he used to get into some pensive mode.
Okay.
Where he would sit and think deeply.
Wow.
And that is an element of some of the people who use, who are strategists.
Yes.
People who strategize and who come with solutions and so on. Most of the time like to fall into some sort of a retreat, whether it is on their own or with other people, but they think deeply about things. So you can see that he was not acting out of impulse in terms of a lot of things.
Wow.
One of the things that we see out of that is that the last time that Difaqane attacked him, he sent in a spy amongst the people of Dingaan so that he can be able to quash Difaqane when he next attacks. He told one of his men that go to Zululand and pretend to be a renegade from me.
Okay.
And find information about what is happening about Difaqane and how he is doing things and so on. Now, on average, the movement of the people in those days without any mode of transportation, Bob Marley would say, my feet is my only courage.
Okay.
They used to walk.
Yeah.
Now, on average, they'd walk between 40 and 60 kilometers a day. Now, which means then if they were to walk a 600 kilometer, give or take, they would take 10 to 15 days.
Yes.
Which would have been the amount of time that the people who were in Zululand would take to go and attack Mzilikazi, for instance, in the Mahalis or in the Apis and so on. So he sent this man. He goes, joins with Difaqane. He tells them of how infuriated he is about Mzilikazi and his operations, and he now wants to be part of the land of KwaZulu and so on.
Yeah.
They share the strategies with him in terms of what they're going to do and how they're going to now get all the cattle. Remember, he had thousands upon thousands of cattle.
Yes, which was the currency of the day.
Absolutely. And which is why, where he was looking for settlement, they had to be waterways.
I see.
Now, the type of a strategist this man is, it gives you an idea. He's got thousands of cattle. He's moving with them upland. Cattle do not move with speed. They have to stop. They have to ruminate. They have, you can't disturb that rhythm. Otherwise, they die.
Yeah.
The farmers who would take cattle from one part of the land to the other, they know that they must at some stage stop with those trucks and let the cattle out to walk. Which reminds me why in England the meat there is so bad, because their cattle don't walk.
I see.
Their meat is so, it's something else. It's unbelievable. compared to meat we eat here, because our cattle are on open land, they walk.
Okay.
So they had to then accommodate that. They had to accommodate the notion of these slow cattle and the shepherds who were moving with them, the women and children, the luggage they carry. It was a whole project plan.
Wow.
In terms of this movement. So, and he had to do it. Somebody had to actually make that type of plan.
The logistics.
Absolutely.
Around the movement.
Absolutely.
Wow. I mean, genius strategy.
Completely.
Genius.
Completely.
He gets to Zimbabwe. Mm-hmm. Okay, so he goes via Zambia. Right. They split. Mm-hmm. Some of his troops and women go to Zimbabwe. He goes to Zambia through the wetlands.
Yes.
Impacts the Lozi. And I mean, I'm just going to get people to buy the book.
Absolutely.
So that they read about it and read more, because we can't cover everything.
No, impossible.
In this time.
Impossible.
But he gets to Zim, he settles there. Why? For the first time, he stays.
Yeah.
He's not moving, he's not going anywhere. He establishes a kingdom.
Well, he had settled in Mpumalanga.
Okay.
And he had started a royal kingdom which he called Ebukumlane.
Yes.
Which basically he was resting from all his walks and travels and so on. But he found that part to be a little bit unfriendly for him because of the lack of rains. He was a bit irritated by this thing of the Highveld where you get thunder, more thunder than rain.
Yes.
Then he said, no, they can't stay here. But he had liked Mpumalanga because the terrain was quite similar to Zululand. And he had decided that's where he would settle. Even though he knew that place was not very far from Zululand.
Okay.
And if Umlilwana still wanted to attack him, could attack him.
Yeah.
But he had settled, but left because of that. So the different places he left was, there were reasons that made him to.
Yeah.
Same as with the Apis and in Mahalis and so on. It was because of the attacks that he had been subjected to by Udinga and later by the Voortrekkers.
Yeah.
But then when he moves over to Zimbabwe, the argument that some people give is that the direction to settle there firstly at a place called Ntabende before Ntabazenduna, is that he had been given that direction by Robert Moffat.
Okay.
I argue that it couldn't be further from the truth because Robert Moffat was a civilian. Mzilikazi was a military strategist.
Yeah.
I do not see how he could allow his intelligence to pass over to a civilian.
Okay.
Now, there's a gentleman called Fidelis Ncube, whose book I quote from, who says that actually Robert Moffat was part of the reason that ultimately the Mtwagazi kingdom collapsed. He says he infiltrated Mzilikazi.
Yeah.
And he gives that out of John Moffat, which is Robert Moffat's son.
Yes.
Who gave and even worked for Cecil John Rhodes.
In fact, I wanted to introduce a new character in this story, which is Cecil John Rhodes.
Yes.
And what his impact has been in terms of the collapse of the kingdom of Abatwagazi. And also, to an extent, the conflict between what we call the Shona today and the Amandebele in Zimbabwe. Yeah.
Cecil John Rhodes, to me, was a real con man par excellence. I mean, I still have to read of other people who gifted their wealth to other governments and universities to an extent that he gave out. I mean, he had stolen so much he could be able to do that. A place that you call Groote Schuur Hospital today was Cecil John Rhodes' house.
Okay.
He was, you can imagine in the 1800s, a person living in that a house that size, and he gives it to the government. And of course, in his honor, people make up Rhodes University and so on.
Yes.
But he was a conman par excellence.
Mm.
He came into the country following his brother, firstly coming into Natal to grow cotton,
Okay.
and later started selling ice cream
Okay.
in Kimberley.
Okay.
He planned the collapse of Zimbabwe from Kimberley, where some of the tricks that he was involved with included even writing checks by pencil.
Okay.
Now, I've never heard of that one, a person who writes a check in pencil. Now, that was Cecil John Rhodes. He started to have so many ventriloquists, which is an interesting concept, I think, because there were people who were speaking like Cecil John Rhodes in his absence.
Puppet masters.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because all the different people who were there, they were basically doing exactly what Cecil John Rhodes wanted to have happen. I talk of Olive Schreiner, the woman who was having quite a bit of admiration for Cecil John Rhodes, and at some stage even wanted them to have an affair.
Okay.
Until she realized that Cecil John Rhodes had an interest in other people of the same gender.
Okay.
He was not interested in that.
Okay.
They say when he saw that people were not interested in his discussion, he was of the habit of taking out shiny stones, those diamonds that he got from Kimberley, just to ensure that he can entice you into his team.
I see.
But
then he was a master as well at causing conflict between people.
Yeah.
So that there's a fallout, divide and conquer. In essence.
Mpofu says something very interesting in his book about apartheid.
Okay.
The new apartheid, I think it's called.
Yeah. You mean Sizwe Mpofu
Welsh? Yes. And he compares Cecil John Rhodes with Cyril Ramaphosa. I found it a very interesting jab at the state of affairs, because Cecil John Rhodes was known to be having an expression where he was saying, every man has got his price.
Wow.
So if he wants you, you must just give your price.
Okay.
And he would say that he wants to go north. He wants to go and conquer. Remember that Cape to Cairo?
Yeah,
which he was talking about. And when other people said to him, but people will die, he said, but men die anyway.
Oof.
So, he was quite a rough character. He used to get people to do what he wants, including Albert Bate, who used to be working with him, after whom Bate Bridge is called today.
Okay.
Alfred Bate, they are the ones who decided that they must, they were blocking Lobengula when he wanted to go, when you're sending people to the Queen to find out if these things that Cecil John Rhodes is saying are true. And they were saying, whatever letter that they find with Lobengula's people, they must toss it overboard so that they can come and give the narrative here. So, he was an amazing character that really messed up things. And ultimately, funny enough, he was given a nickname, Mlamlankuns.
Okay.
And maybe we must go and search and find out if this Mlamlankuns was also in honor of him.
Of Rhodes.
Because he was called Mlamlankuns because he managed to appease the Ndebeles at the time that they were going to attack him. Because at that stage, they were quite infuriated.
Yeah.
And they wanted to deal with him.
Yeah.
And he went against advice from other people that you must not go and talk to those people, that they are going to finish you.
Wow.
And he managed to lull them.
Yeah.
And when he came back, they called him Mlamlankuns.
Hey. Yeah, no, fascinating. Hey, Nthebe Molope. we can talk, you and I can talk about this for the whole day and night, because it's just fascinating leadership insights around some of these personalities and how the wealth of wisdom and the vision that they had. As we conclude, what can we learn from Mzilikazi? So one of the things for me that I picked up from your book was also the fact that during Mzilikazi's reign in what we call South Africa, was the fact that he was a buffer against colonialism.
Correct.
But the moment Mzilikazi crossed over to Zimbabwe, that's when the capture happened.
Yes.
Dispossession happened at a fast pace.
Absolutely.
For me, it tells me about leadership, love for country, love for your people, and becoming a defensive shield. And I'm asking myself whether isn't that a very interesting quality that we learn from this man, from someone whom history presents as a savage.
Yes, yes.
And probably that's why he was called a savage.
Yes.
Because he was a force to be reckoned with.
Remember at the beginning I said the people who were writing the history were placating what had happened, what they themselves had done. So that 100-year war is not presented in the same way as, for instance, World War I and World War II in our history books. You would even get to think that there was something wrong with the Xhosa people.
Yeah.
Because here they are causing such a big war just for, and they keep on going back and stealing cattle from the British. That is how it is being presented. Not that it was such a big issue of people's property, because remember, land is wealth. And now it was land and cattle, which was a medium of exchange at that time. Now, that was being taken forcefully. And in addition to that, people were being enslaved. So that narrative is not given. And that is what Mzilikazi defends and gets to people, and those that he tries to sell this narrative to, that if you do not join me, this is what is going to befall you. Because, it was a Pan-Africanist approach that he was using.
Wow.
To say, let us get to defend our land. And that is why he was not just in one area, but he was trying to go to as broad an area
he multiplied himself.
Absolutely. And used strategies that were never thought of. For instance, he made up a very interesting, innovative idea of a border control. He said, people who want to come and visit me must come via Robert Moffat. Go and report there first. So you get quarantined there. Moffat will tell you this and that are not wanted. Then you can come to me.
Wow.
And that's where he had a problem with both the Griqua and the Boers. Because when they came, they did not come through Moffat. They just came directly. And that's why he saw that these are enemies, definitely. Because one of the reasons he attacked in the Vaal, in Liqua, is that other people who were coming to hunt over the river sought permission.
Yes.
And they had to pay something.
Yeah.
As they were given permission. These ones just decided to come over.
Yeah.
And he said, no, we must punish these people.
Yeah.
There's no way we can just allow this to happen.
Wow.
The other thing which was very interesting in terms of his leadership is that he used to give times at which people can go and hunt. Now you talk about conservation.
Wow.
You're conserving animals, and so on. He knew it at that time.
Wow.
When I was doing research at Magalies, the guys who were there were telling me there was quite a bit of research which was being done around the Magalies. And that place was teeming with a whole lot of animals, different animals, from the hippopotamuses, different type, because that place is in itself, it's got its own unique ecosystem, from different herbals.
The flora and the fauna.
They're of different types.
Mm.
And they say that the number of animals actually started to decrease after Mzilikazi had left.
Okay.
Because that is what was now being open to. And then it's interesting that the lessons that we are given is that we must take care of the rhino, we must do this with animals, be able to be kind with animals and so on. We African people have always lived as one with animals. That is why we even have totems.
Yeah, that are animal.
With our animals.
Yeah.
You know, and we knew how to take care of them.
Yeah.
Without necessarily dressing them in coats
Yeah.
and living with them in the house.
Wow.
But we knew exactly what
Wow.
it is and how it is that we are supposed to be dealing with animals.
Wow.
So that level of intellect
Yeah.
had not been thought of
Yeah.
out of this man. And correct, like you're asking that question with regard to the buffer,
Yes.
is that, look, the first town that was established was Potchefstroom in 1838, after Mzilikazi had been pushed out of town. Pretoria was only established in 1852.
Okay.
The issue is that the Boers were not able to take care of that land because it was defended. And on top of that, it had to be Dingane who gave a cue that this man could be tested. Because Hendrik Potgieter was unsure about going and attack this man. And only after Dingane had gone that he saw that no, but
It's
we
possible.
can take. But remember that the Amabuto, kaMzilikazi, were away at that time. They were already in Zimbabwe. That's why this notion of Robert Moffat I discount. Because a lot of history shows, actually the anecdotal evidence is that they were already there and moving in various places in the northern part of Botswana, in the northern part of Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
Because he was busy getting information and seeing the fertility of the land and so on. By that time they attacked. That is why when Dingane came, he found them to be weakened.
Okay.
And he was able to shake them.
I see.
But because of the intelligence that he had sent the men who went there to join,
he knew
came,
what was coming.
When Dingane came, they were able to deal with him.
Yeah. Wow. Get the book. Get the book. Read more about this man. Read more about this general. Nthebe Molope, thank you so much for joining us.
Fine.
Wow, I mean, geez, we need another 3 hours to share more insights about this man.
Yeah.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, friends, for joining us for this episode. Like, share, subscribe. Salute.